We spoke to a security expert who says that kind of protection is a good idea, but should not be the sole security plan. Mark Quimby says helping provide true response times before a shooting can even help more.
Shots fired. People are running out of the business.
A security guard helped evacuate more than 100 people.
An alert security officer is being hailed as a hero for thwarting an apparent shooting plot.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome again to the Thin Yellow Line podcast. I'm Mike Hefner, your host.
I'm Mark Quimby, the co-host.
And Mark, what do we got on tap today?
We've got really great guests today from Observation Without Limits. We've got Mike Stokes, who's the president, and April Windham, who's the marketing manager. And they're here to talk a little bit about some really interesting technology that certainly as a company and as an industry as a whole, we're interested in integrating into kind of what we do and what we offer to our clients. And I think it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, certainly excited to have them on the show, and we'll get them here online soon. And wasn't that long ago that I was at GSX looking at all of the solutions and technologies that are out there, and so to be able to talk to you all directly is certainly very exciting, because there was a lot of excitement there, and I think because of some of the power of the product that many in the industry are excited about hearing what you all had to say. So April and Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, if I think before we get into a deep dive things, it certainly would be good, Mike, if you could give us a little bit of background on yourself and how your journey was to your current role as president of OWL and a member of the Dynetics executive staff.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm a Huntsville native up here in North Alabama, and I went to school, got my bachelor's degree here in engineering here locally at UAH, University of Alabama in Huntsville, and then I got a master of software engineering down at Auburn and an MBA down at Auburn. Over the following years, I started out.
Oh wait, hold on. We can't. I got to interrupt you. So, do you say Roll Tide or War Eagle, or what exactly? Do you not pick sides here? Or how's this work?
Oh no, I pick sides. I say War Eagle. I'm wearing my Auburn pullover today, as a matter of fact.
Oh wait, where are you going, Mark?
I'll quit. No, I'm just kidding.
Do we need to hang up now?
Well, we appreciate your time, Mike, and it's been great having you on.
I kind of where I thought that was going.
I'm sorry. Please continue.
No, that's all right. As you can imagine, we've got on the team here at Observation Without Limits, we've got graduates from Florida, Mississippi State, all over the place. Kind of a representative, SEC represented team. So
well, hopefully all the LSU people were fired after last week.
We have no LSU people working here.
You're back online, Mike. You're back online.
Good. I thought that would help. So yeah, I got out of school with my bachelor's and started working for the Boeing company, actually, what feels like a long time ago now. Originally in their space system division, working on basically embedded avionics for the shuttle program. And then spent the last probably half of my time there in Phantom Works, doing advanced technology development, which even included some for the commercial airline side of the business for 787 Dreamliner. And about 10 years ago, they were making some changes, kind of internally to Huntsville, and I had always I'd known guys and always respected Dynetics and known guys that worked here, and ran into a friend of mine that works here who knew of a need they had, and when ate lunch with a guy, and the next thing you know, here I am at Dynetics. I've been here almost 10 years, 10 years in January, and about, I guess, 6 years ago is when we started developing our ground surveillance radar products for perimeter security. And given my background in advanced research and development at Boeing, I was asked to kind of take that over and take that on and turn it into something real. So we started with a concept for one, what we call a kind of medium range product that has certain capabilities, and we went through the usual cycle of prototyping that and getting it in front of customers and getting potential customers and that's grown into a 4-product portfolio now, and is going to continue to grow next year. So, basically in about 6 years, gone from the first idea that somebody had in their head about this to, we have several hundred of these deployed both in the United States and in other countries in various types of missions for security personnel's assistance. So, data centers, energy sector sites like transmission substations and power generation plants, airports, all kinds of critical infrastructure sites. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks for that. What could you dive a little deeper into that initial idea? How exactly did it come about to say, hey, let's take this technology and apply it to this new application? Was that an evolution, or was it like a eureka moment?
Well, it was a little bit of a eureka moment. As some of your listeners may know, Dynetics is based in Huntsville, and it really started out 45 years ago and still is a radar company. We do quite a bit of radar work for the Department of Defense and other government customers. And it was during one of those times we were partnered with Boeing on the original Southern Border Security kind of project back in the 90s, the Southern Border Initiative, late 2000s also. The Southern Border Initiative, Secure Border Initiative project. And they were attempting to do what we see happening now in the critical infrastructure sector, basically using, system capabilities and technology to try to aid in securing the perimeter, in this case, of the United States. And they had some challenges there. At the time, there really wasn't a real cost-effective, high-performing option for wide area surveillance, using really any kind of technology and for sure radars. So we were involved in that. We walked out of that experience basically saying somebody ought to go build a ground surveillance radar that's designed to be integrated with a wide variety of perimeter intrusion detection systems and other sensing technologies to try to aid this mission. So we really came at it out of an experience with the government, but we very quickly pivoted to apply this in the critical infrastructure sector, and that first entry was really with airports. Airport customers that had issues with very, very, very large perimeters. We have airport customers whose their fence line alone is close to 35 miles. So trying to secure that from a manned standpoint with nothing but cameras and manpower is a very, very challenging thing. So we got into it originally in the airport sector and quickly proliferated. That's that Auburn degree, right?
Mark can edit that out.
Proliferated to other critical infrastructure sectors, which is where we are today.
That's very cool. And I guess from a capital stack standpoint, you had the backing of Dynetics and an established company with I guess some of the, not only the money bags, but engineers and that kind of thing to help you get it off the ground back in many moons ago.
Absolutely. So yeah, a couple points there I think that are worth making is, Dynetics is a very innovative company, and like other companies, that we spend internal research and development funds on ideas such as this. And Dynetics has been has a history of being very open to those kinds of technology developments and testing them to see, what value is there. And luckily for us, the culture here is very supportive of that. We have a tremendous amount of highly educated people. It's kind of a joke, you can't swing a dead cat around here without hitting a PhD. And one of those guys that originally had this concept was a guy named Jeff Skinner. He is still working for Dynetics, one of the most respected radar engineers we have in the company. And this was really his baby. He literally he was the one supporting this border program, and literally went to his boss and said, hey, can I have a few dollars, to go throw one of these together? And we actually still have that prototype out back here in our high bay facilities. It looks like a Radio Shack exploded in a box and nailed a 2x4. It's kind of a relic, but yeah, Dynetics was very supportive of that, both from a capital investment standpoint and had the people with the right background, the right experience to make that happen.
Very cool. Well, maybe now it would be a good time, because I think many of our listeners aren't intimately familiar with the Ground Aware product. Could you or April give us kind of a executive summary of what it is and what it does and typical applications and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a ground aware is the name. It's a radar, and it is typically installed on a telephone pole or a site or some other type of existing infrastructure at the site. And you can kind of think of it as a big lighthouse. It is overwatching that site constantly by sending out radio waves and looking at the returns, the feedback, the reflections it gets, much like a lighthouse shines light on any ships that are passing around it. So it's constantly basically monitoring everything on the ground that's moving, and actually at low altitude in the air if some of our customers are worried about counter-UAS situations. So it's always there on, it's always watching, it operates in all weather, and it's a very, very high update rate. So it's literally scanning the environment about 8 times a second and keeping track of anything around that's moving. And while it's doing that, we also have classification algorithms that once an object's been detected as moving, we actually can make a determination, a very highly accurate determination, about whether it's an animal, a person, a vehicle, or an aircraft that's in the area. So now that once the sensor has sensed something on the ground or at low altitude, and because it's getting a radio wave reflection from that object, it knows exactly where it is in space. So, literally from a GPS location standpoint, it knows where it's at. Then it compares that to what the operator has set up for that site. For example, if you had a transmission substation that was 500, 1,500 feet on square, it knows whether that target is just identified as outside the substation, on the road next to the substation, at the fence of the substation, or inside the substation. So it can make a determination about, is this a threat? Is this something I should alarm somebody about? And then it takes the appropriate action. It can push alarms into other perimeter intrusion detection systems, send text messages, flash lights, turn on sirens, pretty much whatever you want. So it's designed to be that all-weather, 24/7, 365 overwatch of the site, so the operator, can pay attention when only a real event's happening.
Yeah, Mike, I hail from the days of sitting in a control room and the expectation being, hey, we got 100 cameras, watch them all and perceive everything that happens every second. And then next week we had 200 cameras and the expectation didn't change. And so it's really interesting to see, as we've mentioned before, that the device gets more intelligent so that it frees up those operators to not waste time with false calls or false identification. I mean, you mentioned earlier, an airport might have 35 miles of perimeter, and you can imagine if you didn't have the ability to tell the difference between a deer and somebody hopping the fence, that you would spend a lot of wasted man hours sending vehicles out potentially, or foot patrols even, depending on how close they are, to check on nothing. And so being able to, the name of the game, certainly whenever you're bringing in any kind of detection equipment or software, is to limit the false readings and false positives as much as possible, so once again you're becoming efficient and you're only seeing what really matters. And so it's great to see this kind of technology emerging and getting more sophisticated, so that the professional security officer, I think that term, it means more now than it has ever, that changing the expectation of clients and the public for what a security professional in the field is really capable of integrating and managing. And certainly this is one of those technologies that showcases that the people in the field certainly have things at their disposal that 10, 15 years ago, the Paul Blart Mall Police kind of perspective really isn't germane to what we're doing these days, and certainly where we're going.
No, not at all. Yeah, let me, if I could just add to that, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, Dynetics is primarily a military contractor. And we've discussed internally several times that these professional security personnel are dealing with the same breadth and levels of technology in many cases, and layers of technology in many cases, that are similar to what our military guys are dealing with when they manage the systems that protect our nation and protect our warfighters when they're in harm's way. So you're exactly right. You know, and that's exactly our focus. You know, we want to give these guys tools that help them manage that workload of security and make their lives easier. We realize that they're, to your point of, you know, 1 week it's 100 cameras, next week it's 200. We go into secure command centers sometimes and we're just baffled by the number of monitors hanging on the wall and the number of small thumbnail video inputs that these guys are trying to manually monitor. And I say manually, they get some help, you know, nowadays from video analytics and other things, motion sensors that are designed to cue those cameras, but you know, those technologies are sometimes hampered by darkness or weather, or having to be trained to see a target before it alarms to it. You know, our approach is very different, and our systems, excuse me, if I could give you an example, you know, a lot of our, you know, to your point, everybody's been in the command center, seen those wall of monitors and cameras. Our customers are using these systems and integrating them with those layers of technology to move to what they call, what our customers have started calling a black screen approach. So literally, they now have a monitor and monitors with nothing on them. And it's only when an event happens that our system logs that event in their perimeter intrusion detection system, brings up their PIDs or their VMS with already the properly selected camera for the threat that's been identified, the camera that can see that threat best, maximized on the screen, and we command that camera to continually keep that threat in the field of view while we're also providing that operator with the procedure that he needs to follow to respond to that threat based on where it's at, based on what side it is, based on whether it's inside the perimeter already or approaching. And while we are also simultaneously taking deterrence actions for that security professional. So we're going ahead and turning lights on at the site, for example, or sounding a siren or flashing strobe lights to try to slow that intruder down or scare them off. So again, the whole thing is designed around this, you know, detect, track, and deter kind of model where we're trying to help with that operator perform as many of those tasks as we can, or at least in a more efficient fashion.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you're able to call up, you know, what we would call post instructions. You know, you get some of these really complex sites with many posts and and as you said, each one of these locations or sensors may have a completely different response for that, and it may change every shift. There may be 3 different responses for every different location based on the time of day and or even the day of the week. And so being able to call that up along with whatever camera that might be slaved or whatever other sensors are slaved to that area and to that radar, you know, that takes that, you know, that much off the officer where they're not grabbing a, you know, 5-inch thick 3-ring binder and trying to flip around it and remind themselves of this very nuanced response protocol for this specific sensor at this specific time on this specific day at this specific site. And so efficiency is the name of the game. You know, it's great to have all this technology, but if we can't make it efficient, it really isn't as usable. So it's great to see that that capability is sort of built into it.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's been our goal, you know. And honestly, we've learned that these technologies, and specifically the way we integrate them, is also allowing the operators to not only tailor those responses by day of the week or time of day, but also, if you will, layers at the site. For example, we have customers that, you know, the property they own may be 10 acres, but the actual fence perimeter might only be, you know, 7 acres square. So, and maybe it's next to a roadway that has a sidewalk that people walk up and down or whatever. So they're interested, they set up no loitering alarms outside the fence, but on their property, so that, you know, the system can go ahead and try to scare off anybody. You know, they realize, okay, that's a walkway, people are going to turn around, you know, they're in their vehicles or whatever, and we don't care about that. We don't want to bother the operator with that, take them away from other tasks. But so we're going to let that happen as long as nobody stays and lingers, or as long as they don't, you know, make consistent motions toward the perimeter that we really care about. So they're even allowing, you know, they're even tailoring their responses by where on the site something is occurring and the behavior of that threat, and even in many cases allowing the system to go ahead and in an automated fashion take some action to try to deal with that threat without even bothering the operator. You know, we may turn the lights on and sound a siren or play a voice message that says, hey, move on, you're on private property, and do that all in an automated fashion without having to bother the security professional, and only engage them when the threat reaches the next level and that they need to respond to.
Hey, Mike, one of the, as you know, we are trying to provide our customers the optimal security solution given their particular needs and circumstances, and certainly offering OWL is something that we're excited about being able to offer to our customers, that where the situation in the use case exists. One of the, I guess, objections or questions that we get is around false positives, and so in that circumstance where, as the radar has such a wide and expansive coverage capability, and so maybe you can't put cameras in where you can do a visual verification, and so we get a lot of questions around false positives, and I wondered if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yes, sir, absolutely, and we're very sensitive to that too. That is a focus and a sensitivity throughout the industry, and unfortunately, no system is perfect, and even to some extent, the more automation and intelligence you try to bring to bear, sometimes you can exacerbate false positives, or false alarms, we call them, significantly. Our systems handle that two ways. So, really three. So, number one, we have algorithms that unlike other systems, ignore the clutter in an environment. So, we're looking and updating, as I mentioned earlier, 8 times a second, so fast that things like rain or the wind blowing the trees or anything like that, things that would freak out a normal radar, or even, and for sure, a motion sensor or even the motion analytics on many cameras, don't bother us. So we ignore all that and treat it like the biological, environment that it is. So when we show an operator something on the screen, it really is on the screen. It's really a legitimate thing, something moving. Now, then the second way you avoid those false alarms is now I know the object's real. What is it, right? And we have algorithms that we've developed over our years of experience doing other programs that look at the mechanics of that object that we're observing to decide is it an animal, vehicle, a person, or a aircraft. For example, our system can actually tell and discern the body mechanics of a human being walking, running, or crawling. It can actually see the rotor blades and propeller blades and so forth on an aircraft. It can actually see the number of legs and the body mechanics of an animal. It can tell the relative motion of a car, something metal that's very edgy with, a big thing that's metal, the body of the vehicle with wheels moving at a different speed internally to it. So we're looking at a tremendous amount of detail to make sure that we make a decision about what that object is as soon as possible. And then we compare that to, okay, where is it? What areas has the operator told the system to care about, and what kind of threats have they told it to care about? For example, there may be areas where you're inside a secure perimeter, but vehicles are okay. But if anybody comes in there on foot, I want an alarm, right? Well, now, because I know the difference between a vehicle and an animal, a vehicle and a person, then I can make that determination for the operator. So, bottom line, we have a lot of sophisticated processing that lowers that false alarm rate. Out of the box, if you just grab one of our systems off the shelf and hang it on the pole and turn it on, we are about 89–90% accurate with no tail. Now, unfortunately, every site's a little bit different. There's realities about how much, the terrain changes and so forth. So normally it takes us, we spend about a couple hours at the first installation, what we call fine-tuning the configuration. And after that, the performance gets up in the mid-90s. And then we can do some things further with the operator configuration to aid that along. So that's one of the reasons why, we also pair it with cameras. You're approaching well into the 90s from an accuracy standpoint. Now, since I take an automated perspective on the cameras, and when I make an alarm, I'm automatically moving the camera to show the operator what that alarm is. In the rare cases where a false alarm does happen, the operator immediately can see the video and know, okay, well, for whatever reason, the system has called that something that's really not. I don't need to respond any further. So we try to take a layered approach to that. We put as much processing in the system as we can to make it as accurate as possible. We handle it in the configuration to make the likelihood of a false alarm very low. And then we automate the verification, visual verification, so that the operator can terminate a false alarm as early as possible.
Do those algorithms, evolve? Is that something that let's say that over the next 3 years they get more and more sophisticated, and typically these kinds of things do improve over time? Is that something that can be pushed back out to these edge devices, or is it something that once that's programmed into that specific piece, that's kind of the era it lives in for the rest of its life?
No, that's a great question. It is very much pushed out to these edge devices. So the system is simply just the radar and a back-end server, and it's not I say server, it can be really a computer almost of any strength, and that server, quote unquote, is running our ground-aware software, and we make updates to it periodically. Sometimes to add capability for the customer, they want a new button on the screen, whatever. But when we do an algorithm upgrade, we offer our customers that upgrade. Matter of fact, if most of our customers allow us vendor access into their network, so we'll literally do that once we coordinate with them remotely for the customer. The customer doesn't have to do anything. Now, in some cases, like for example in the energy sector, these edge devices are on a SCADA network or some other kind of air gap network where they don't allow it. It's not even connected to the internet, much less allow external access. So those have to be done on site, and then we coordinate we either do it, we coordinate with the customer to do it, or with their integrator if they have one that's supporting them to do it. But yeah, we always offer those upgrades back to the customer. We don't want to go change stuff right with it they didn't ask for, or give them something that they don't want. So we always coordinate it first. We make those available every time they're needed.
Hey, Mike. Now, going back to GSX, and for a couple of years now, there's been a tremendous amount of excitement, concern, interest in counter drone, and I noticed that some of the latest news coming out of OWL is on that topic. So I just wanted to ask if you could give us kind of an update on what you're doing there and how the company is what your solutions look like and what you're doing there exactly.
Sure. So we're approaching that kind of in two ways. Obviously, one's the sensing aspect through our radars. And we have radars now that are three-dimensional, so they not only detect stuff, kind of in 2D space, if you will, up on the ground, but can also tell how high an object is in the air, what its altitude is pretty accurately. Detecting stuff that's flying is honestly not really the challenge. The challenge is discerning it from a bird, honestly, or another airborne object. And that's really where we're advising the customers to start with their kind of in-game reaction in mind first. So I'm at GSX, right, and everybody runs up and says, hey, if you guys got something that can detect a drone, I said, yeah, sure. And I said, but what are you going to do about it when you know it's there, right? Are you literally going to send a security professional to shoot with a shotgun? Or are you going to sound an alarm and everybody go inside? Or what are you going to do? Because that's where it starts getting sophisticated and expensive, is how accurate do I want the system to be from a false alarm standpoint between drones and birds. So we've got some algorithms we're working on now. We've got the sensing side done. We can detect. We've got some algorithms we're working on now to improve, looks at the flight mechanics of the airborne object, and can make some determinations about, is this thing flying like a man-made object or like a God-made object, and go from there. So now that's the sensing piece and the intelligence piece. Now you ask yourself, all right, if I'm pretty sure I got a threat that's coming at me, what do I do about it? So, in the United States, those laws are just continually evolving, and they're still trying to figure that out. Right now, the military is really the only entities that can take certain independent actions against those kind of threats and not have to explain a lot later. Right now, drones are really treated like general aviation aircraft, and you can't just go knock one out of the sky without having a conversation later about it with somebody. But we are already, to be preemptive of that, we already are integrated with multiple types of what we call kinetic effectors, i.e. things you hit the drone with, capture the drone with, otherwise do physical manipulation of the drone. So for example, Fordham, which is a partner of ours out west, they make a product called Drone Hunter, which is another drone, a good guy drone, if you will, that once we detect a drone threat, we can actually tell that drone, go fly out there, we tell it how to fly out there and get behind that other drone, and then how to capture it with a net gun and take control of it, so we can either bring it back to us, go drop it somewhere safe, drop it where it is, whatever. We also have what we call electronic defeat, so ways of jamming the drone's GPS signal that it's flying by, it's downlinked to the ground if it has one. So we're approaching the defeat side of it, of what you do about the drone, in multiple ways, so that in the future, when these actions become more common and a little more, open to the option, become more options for the security personnel to react, those technologies, we've already integrated with them and are ready to, we can just pick them off the shelf. So the current systems we deploy that use those defeat technologies today are overseas or either to the government.
Yeah, I think the drone issue is sort of popped up out of nowhere, seemingly for companies, corporations, and even municipalities and individuals. It's kind of amazing, for $1,000, the kind of capability of an unmanned aircraft that Joe consumer can go to Amazon and order. I mean, these DJI Phantoms and the ilk. I mean, they're fairly sophisticated aircraft for not a lot of money, and I think the legislation just couldn't keep up with how quickly the common person had this capability to fly by GPS and fly by sight and all these kind of things at these pre-programmed routes and all that, and even those that can carry a significant payload. It kind of sprung up on everybody. I'm sure that the legislation will evolve, but it surprises people when you talk to them that yeah, if you're in your backyard and somebody's drone flies over your head, I mean, you become the bad guy if you shoot it out of the sky. And I think that shocks people that they don't own their own airspace, if you will. Once again, I think that's emerging, and we'll see some change in legislation just because of the capability of these drones and what you could do with them with a payload. But it's good to see that you guys will be probably ready and waiting whenever those legislation and those things do change, that they'll have some options for customers to battle that.
Absolutely, and yeah, ironically, matter of fact, I have meetings next week in D.C. about this with some of the congressional guys. We have customers coming to us that are, I'll say, they're large, been established a long time, they have resources, and they're taking the perspective, and I was speaking in D.C. recently about this at the County UAS Symposium, and I even, I had an FAA guy come up to me afterward, and we had a conversation around the comment I made, which is what I'm about to tell you guys. We have customers coming to us that are saying, look, I can't get any relief legislatively for this. I can't get any relief policy-wise to the FAA for this. So I'm just going to go ahead and start defending against these threats and letting these guys sue me, and we'll see if we can get some relief via legal precedent. I don't know. They from their perspective as critical infrastructure owners, they don't know why they should view this as any different than somebody climbing over a fence that they don't know their intent.
Right.
So they're looking at it like, listen, I got a site to protect, I got critical infrastructure to protect, I got personnel working there to protect. I'm going to do what I got to do, and if John Q. Citizen wants to take me to court for his $800 drone, okay, well, I'll give it back to him or whatever, or I'll pay him, but I'm gonna take care of my site, take care of my people. So there's a lot of frustration within the critical infrastructure industry about this for those customers that are concerned and view these as threats about the lack of ability they have to react. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of years, I think, as these things mature.
Yeah, that is certainly a space that we're watching, and I can only imagine if you're the head of security for the NFL and you got an outdoor stadium, and to say, hey, we can't get the government behind us to be able to say, hey, we can take care of a drone that's trying to fly into the stadium. It's just crazy, and the laws certainly need to catch up.
Yeah, and frankly, you know, I'm not an alarmist by any means. I just hope that, you know, we as a country have sometimes had a habit of waiting till something happens and then reacting in a lot of ways that end up in the long term don't necessarily make sense. And I hope we're not doing that here. I mean, you know, 9/11 is a great example. We had threats that we never kind of envisioned. The next thing you know, nobody can take a pair of nail clips on an aircraft for 10 years. You know, I hope they don't wait around until something tragic happens with these drone threats and then turn around and take an overreaction when they've had a whole lot of time to think about this problem and develop a metered and reasonable kind of approach to it. And I hope they get there soon.
Right. Now, Mike, I don't know if you've had an opportunity or anybody on your team's had an opportunity to get feedback from, you know, again, the podcast, our target audience and focus is highlighting the successes of the men and women out there that are serving as security professionals and other first responders. And do you have any testimonials or feedback from those folks that have been in an environment where you've deployed the product? And you know, if I would imagine that it's extreme. You know, once it's in place and they see the event-based layered security that the product offers, that they'd be very excited about it, and what we talked about earlier in terms of enabling them for high value added tasks. But just curious if you've gotten any feedback at this point.
Oh yeah, so, you know, obviously, or maybe not, but you know, we are not allowed to disclose really who uses our products, or I can't say, oh yeah, you know, this site had an intrusion 3 weeks ago that we stopped, kind of thing. But yes, we get a lot of feedback about this, both from the leadership, security leadership in various large organizations, as well as right down to the professional that's having to work these intruder alerts and these events. And they are very, very pleased. You know, we've had comments back from, hey, you know, it's really allowed me to be more informed and give me more actionable information and cut down my workload. We've gotten positive feedback on you know, the system collects all of the data associated with the intrusion and integrates it all together. So forensically, they've had situations where they've gone back and prosecuted persons once they caught them that attempted to get in a site or did get in a site for a moment. You know, and all the information, the video data, the radar track data, everything was there that they needed to execute that prosecution. And then from a deterrent standpoint, it is a regular occurrence, literally every week or so, that we get an email from one of our customers that, hey, you know, we had an intrusion event last night at this site. We want to send you guys a video of what the system did. And it's always the same video. Some, you know, chucklehead is coming up to the site to do something he shouldn't, and you know, based on the setup of that site, at the appropriate time, the system detects him and alarms on him and takes deterrence measures and runs him off, and the security professional never has to deal with it, which, you know, they love from a standpoint of, especially when those sites are sometimes 20 and 30 minutes away from any law enforcement response. So yes, we've got positive feedback in a lot of areas. And yeah, and April's giving me the signal she's got something to say here. So
yeah, I'll chime in on this one. So like Mike said, most of our customers don't want to disclose their security practices, but we do have one customer testimonial video that's on our website that I continue to link to from a dam here in Alabama that had an intrusion alert and was able to capture those individuals trying to get into the dam site, where the security professionals do talk to us about how that happened and what that looked like. And you can see a video of the system actually detecting those individuals in real time. So I can send you that link, and that can be something that you can link out to your customers as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll link it here with the pod as well. So that'd be cool to see.
Yeah, I was in the Marine Corps some time ago, and one of the most fascinating technologies and useful technologies that we used was counter battery radar. It kept a lot of us alive, and and gave us a chance to return fire before, you know, our adversaries were able to leave from where they were shooting mortars or artillery towards us from. And so I've always been fascinated with radar, and it's really interesting now to see these, you know, worlds converge where, you know, at the time it was this high-tech military equipment that we were forced not to break, even though that was difficult for us at times. And now here we are, and you know, back and domestically using, you know, a similar technology as security professionals. So it's really exciting for me personally to see that technology make its way to what our officers are doing, and be able to you know, be a force multiplier and make us more technically proficient and efficient at what we're doing. So it's really exciting stuff, and we appreciate you guys coming online and kind of highlighting some of the things that you're doing for our professionals and for our clients that tune into the podcast.
Oh, you're very welcome. You know, our whole mission is to try to be really a force multiplier for the security professional, and to give them the tools they need to execute their job, you know, more efficiently. And we try to approach the system that way, you know, from stem to stern. For example, you mentioned training earlier. You know, our interface is literally an extension of Google Maps. So if you've ever used Google Maps, you've already used our user interface. We try to make this as simple from a installation, training, usability, day-to-day operation standpoint as possible, because we realize the loads that these security professionals are facing and how their roles are evolving and growing and maturing really on a daily basis. So we'll continue to do that, and hope we can get in there and help them. Fantastic.
Well, I guess before we wrap up entirely, for those of our audience that are interested in learning more about OWL and potentially the various use cases, where should they go to get more information?
So OWLknows.com, owlknows.com, so OWLknows.com.
Perfect. Well, April and Mike, thank you so much for your time and joining us on the Thin Yellow podcast. Everything that you've outlined, I think, is going to be extremely helpful and certainly right on point for our audience, and we appreciate you joining us here.
Our pleasure. We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for what you guys are doing, and we thank all the security professionals that are listening to your podcast and site for the work they do every day to keep the lights on and the site secure and the kids safe and everything they do. So we appreciate it.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
I jumped the gun on this.
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you tuning in to the Thin Yellow Line podcast. We'll see you next time.